Imagine if you had a bee buzzing around your head and someone asked you to say the alphabet backwards. Imagine if you were in the middle of a really loud rock concert and someone wanted you to name all of your aunts and uncles. Imagine if you were wearing 3 pairs of gloves and someone told you to eat a box of raisins one by one. This is what things are like for me. I have autism.
Hello everyone, my name is Dominic Murphy and welcome to my house. Now today I'm going to be talking to you all about autism. Autism is a lifelong disability that affects many of the skills that other people are capable of managing, therefore making the person with autism see the world differently to others. Now, the exact cause of autism is unknown, however many researchers have looked into genetic reasons as well as external physical factors that affect brain development.
People with autism are at different points on the autism spectrum, ranging from those with profound autism to those with high-functioning autism, which is also known as Asperger's syndrome, which I have myself, and will be the one I'll be discussing with you today. Asperger's, like other forms of autism, is most likely to affect males than females, though the reasons behind this are unclear.
Now, there is further information you need to know, but let's take it outside.
Now, one of the skills that many people with Asperger's struggle with are social skills. For example, I struggled to socialise when I was at school, which didn't only affect chances of friendship, but it also made me a common target of bullying, which happens to a lot of people with Asperger's, and it makes them struggle a lot through their school days.
Another problem that autistic people have is that they at times can't understand the body language of some people. So for example, by just looking at someone, they can't tell by just looking at them whether they're happy or if they're angry. As well as this, they also struggle to understand humour. So for example, if banter is ever used on them, they'll take it in a serious and offensive way rather than finding it very funny and just forgetting about it immediately.
All these problems have the capability of causing high levels of anxiety and confusion within the individual.
Now, aside from anxiety and confusion, the autistic person can also have a variety of different behaviours that people without Asperger's will not have. Repetitive behaviour is a very good example because this is when the autistic person will have a daily routine that they'll refuse to do anything different from. They can have this routine for days, weeks, months, or they could even have it for years. Such as a daily routine I like to do is wearing a certain type of shirt on certain days. Also, an autistic person can have a hobby that they're stuck with for probably a matter of years. For example, mine is always watching the same films, rather than with new films I don't really think I'd like to watch, as I'll always get distracted by other things.
Other behaviours include gestures that express whenever they get anxious, excited, or even amused. Common gestures include hand flapping like this, and jumping up and down like this. Both of these gestures I exhibit. A common example is when watching something on TV. A lot of people who are aware of Asperger's will consider these behaviours to be very odd and feel the individual is not normal.
Now, in addition to this, children with Asperger's often have very loud meltdowns if things don't go the way that they want them to, while older people with it, such as myself, will only get very frustrated if things don't go the way we want them to. Believe me, these meltdowns that the children can happen for the smallest of reasons, therefore giving the parents of them the hardest job of having to comfort them, which shows that Asperger's doesn't just cause harm towards the person with it, but also to their family. And speaking of families, why don't we go and talk to some people who know what it's like to live with an autistic person? My family.
It can be quite challenging and quite frustrating because although you don't always understand how what we're thinking and feeling, it can be very difficult for us to understand how you're thinking and feeling as well.
It can be quite frustrating for people like myself to appreciate the difficulties that someone with autism has, and to have to keep remembering those difficulties when you're dealing with that person.
It can be quite eventful. Like sometimes it can be quite normal, you know, but then, you know, you can like lash out, or, you know, something happens and you react to it differently to us, and then we sort of don't know how to, you know, react to that.
Well, the advantages, as I say, is that you generally always tell the truth. You find it very difficult to lie. So as a parent, as I say, that's been really useful. The disadvantages are that we worry about all our children, but we worry about you particularly. Probably we shouldn't worry like we do. And I know you're hoping to go to university, and that's a worry. But then we went to UEL a few weeks ago with you, and they were asking questions and you knew the answers and you were really involved, and really it was just amazing for me to see how much you know and how interested you are in the subject you want to study.
The advantages are quite considerable. The obvious one being that you appreciate that not everybody's the same, and so you'll learn how to deal with that. But an autistic person can bring an interesting dynamic to the family and to conversation. Autistic people can be very funny and bring a very interesting level of humour to a conversation. The disadvantages are that you do need to be aware of this disability and find a way of dealing with it so that the other person feels valued and welcome, and that you don't patronise them.
I feel like I've got more sort of an idea of life outside, because they've got quite closed lives. I feel like I've had more experience because of the circumstances, whereas they, you know, they've lived quite, you know, they don't get it, you know. Sometimes, like, we read of Mice and Men, and Lenny has learning difficulties and mental disability, and they find it funny, whereas I found it quite empathetic, you know. The disadvantages is probably, you know, I get quite annoyed at people at school when they make fun of people who are like who have learning difficulties or mental disabilities or autism, you know.
However, there are more things that capture my interest though. We now know what Asperger's syndrome is and what it does, and also how families cope with it. But let's find out how it's helped nowadays. SNAP is a charity located in Brentwood whose purpose is to assist people with special needs and disabilities, including autism. They help around 1,500 families and 1,600 children. Interestingly, about 700 to 800 of the children they help have autism. I even had the opportunity to interview the charity's director for further information on their guidance to autistic people.
Right, well, SNAP stands for Special Needs and Parents, and it's been going for 20 years now, and it supports parents who've got children with any special need or disability, and that does include children and young people on the autistic spectrum, 0 to 25. So we do that in a variety of ways, but primarily it's about offering support to the parents, and that's information and advice to them. That's through our busy helpline, that's by telephone and email. It's through something called the SNAP directory that appears on the SNAP website. Many years ago it was in a hard copy format like that, but it's now on our website, snapcharity.org, and there's a comprehensive list of useful organisations that can help with that. As I said before, SNAP started 20 years ago. In those days there was very little known about SNAP, which is why SNAP started in the first place, because I was one of the founder members and I was very concerned about the lack of support that there was. Most people had only heard of autism because of the film Rain Man. That seemed to be all that they'd heard about in those days. Now obviously we've moved on a lot since then, and lots of children are being diagnosed, and early intervention has been a big part of that. I guess, as with all things, information is key. Research, money needs to go in for research to try and identify more about autism. I think there's a lot of lobbying going on. The National Autistic Society is very active in this, raising awareness and an acceptance of people with autism. So I think that information is key to making people more aware and to help people, particularly as they get older with employment and those sort of things.
Now, the reason why it's important to get this information across is to create awareness, to show that despite the fact that disabled people behave differently, it doesn't mean that they should be treated badly, as by treating them with respect and having their problems understood, you're not just helping them, but you're also helping yourself as well.
You must also remember that people with Asperger's don't only behave the way they do because of their disability, but also because they're not getting the attention and understanding that they really need to deserve. However, hopefully, this documentary will give you that important message. But that's it from me today, and now I've decided that I'm going to go and watch a film. I mean, come on. It is my hobby after all.